And by the way, if you're talking to your financial advisor, or if you're getting a second opinion, or maybe you're shopping or looking for a financial advisor, one of the things I would ask is, how do you rebalance? It might just, from what I outlined, it might seem very simple. Like, hey, of course, bring the portfolio back to, my risk profile that I initially said that I wanted to have. But there's a difference in how you rebalance as well. And the question to ask is, do you rebalance on a calendar-based system or a trigger-based system? And what do I mean by that? On a calendar-based system, and a lot of advisors do this because it's easier. It's simple, right? You could just simply say, hey, every June 30th, we rebalance our portfolios. Or maybe you do it quarterly, or maybe you do it semi-annual, whatever it is. The pros there is it's a lot easier to do that. It's simple to implement. We just have it scheduled, right? The problem is, between those intervals, your portfolio might be completely out of sync. And the changes that happen between those intervals, that isn't the best way to do it, because a lot can happen, especially nowadays in this period of high volatility. Like, we can have significant drifts between intervals. So I would say that if someone does a calendar-based rebalancing, that wouldn't be my first choice, right? And especially depending on how far apart those intervals are. The biggest problem with calendar-based rebalancing is sometimes it's not appropriate. Sometimes you're doing it needlessly, but also you might be triggering unwanted taxable capital gains within your after-tax accounts if you simply have it on a calendar schedule, right? What we do at Guardian is trigger-based rebalancing, right? We set up certain thresholds, and you can do this at any interval, any percentage. But for instance, let's say a specific asset class changes by more than 10% relative to its target allocation, whatever you've determined, right? That's when we would trigger a rebalance. So we're more trigger-based. You have to have a significant amount of change within your portfolio, and we determine those limits, and we can change those limits, obviously, based on what's appropriate for you. But that's what I would recommend. If you're shopping for someone to help you with your investments, whether it's a financial advisor, stockbroker, anybody, and you're asking them how they rebalance, I would encourage you to find somebody who does trigger-based rebalancing. Enough on rebalancing. Like I said, not the most interesting topic, but an important one. And obviously it's more fun to talk about diversification and any number of other topics, but rebalancing is also very important.
We find that a lot of the topics Yelisey are like, well, this might not be let's talk about taxes. Well, that might not be very exciting. Let's talk about,
as I said that, I thought to myself, I'm like, I don't know, if we had to pick which of the topics are really all that exciting. I don't know that any of them are.
The interesting thing about it is that they may not be exciting, but they're the important details, Yeah. And right. For whatever reason, you and I and Trey and we love the not exciting topics for our careers, but these things do matter, and they make a big impact on people's retirement and their investments and their portfolios. But for our listeners, if you haven't heard from your advisor lately, especially upcoming on election, et cetera, or if you're nearing retirement, and there's different terms for this, et cetera. Some people call it the retirement red zone. I don't know. It sounds a little, I don't know, cheeky to me, but I think
I've called it that. Come on, Ryan. Settle down, Ryan.
Oh, come on. Well, so here's the thing: is that it depends on, hey, how close am I to retirement? How far am I into retirement? And there's not a right or wrong answer here, because somebody might be out there saying, hey, I'm 53 years old. It seems way too early for me, et cetera. But it all depends on what your situation is. We met with somebody here recently, and they're retiring right at 55. He came in at 54 years old. Because he's retiring early, he thought, hey, I've really got to look into these things. I'm retiring from my main career. I kind of feel like I should probably keep working. I haven't figured that part out yet, but I know that I need to do something, right? So for a lot of people coming in, 2, 3, 5 years before they think they might retire, absolutely appropriate. Even, hey, I retired, 3 years ago. I'm already on Social Security. I kind of feel like everything's already set. I've already moved my 401k to an IRA. I feel like everything's kind of in place. Well, again, if you haven't gone through to say, hey, what's my personal risk level? What's my reward level? And what does that compare to? How does that look against a benchmark? If you haven't gone through those conversations specifically, I would encourage you to do so. I think it's an extremely important part of managing your retirement plan, right? And obviously you have a planner to help you manage the funds and help you manage when to pull from what account and your spend down plan, and working with you to say, hey, you know what, if the market does well, your first year or two of retirement, that sets you up really well. But then how do we plan for if the market goes the other way, your first year or two in retirement, right? We need to be able to plan for the expected and the unexpected, which sounds kind of funny to say, but you need to have some contingency plans and know what you're comfortable with, and saying, hey, if the market goes south, am I okay losing XYZ percentage or XYZ dollars out of my portfolio? And that's something that is a hard conversation to have. We find that, when the market's doing well, or even just reasonable, right? If the market's doing reasonably well, people suddenly get really, really comfortable, and we'll ask them and say, hey, what type of portfolio are you in? What's your risk tolerance? And they'll say, oh, I'm aggressive. I like to be aggressive. I let it ride. I get the gains. But like the moment that we get a downturn and, somebody loses a good chunk of money, whether it's, on a particular day or in a given week, et cetera, suddenly they're not quite as aggressive anymore. We see that pretty frequently. I don't know if you still see that, Yelisey, but I know I do when talking with people.